Hi guys, today we're going to be looking at some vector commands and we're going to see how we can use indexing and other commands that can manipulate and get you some values using your vectors. So on this first line we have v equals this vector right here. So we have 2.59, 4 minus 3.5, 8.99, minus 2 and 1. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 values. So if we run this, we should get a vector that is 1 row and 6 columns. Okay. Alright, so it's run everything. Let me just run this again. Hopefully I can just run this section. Okay, so now we've created a 1 by 6 vector. Now if we wanted to have a 6 rows and 1 column vector, all we could do is just put an apostrophe next to it. And if we run it again, we will have a 6 by 1 vector. Okay, so let me just run section. So 2.59, 4 minus 3.5, all the way to 1. And by default, if you just leave a space between each number, so 2.59 space 4 space minus 3.5, it will just create another column. So that's how you would make a vector. So let me just clear this output. Okay, now if you wanted to directly create a column vector, what you would do is instead of well, you could just make a row vector and then transpose it, but if you didn't want to do that, you could just put semicolon in between each number and that would generate a column vector. So if I run this section, I get a 6 by 1 as I needed and I get all the values there. So that's how I would generate a column vector. So you can separate each column, or you can separate each row using a semicolon. And then okay, so this is going to, let me just write a comment here. This assigns a vector to the variable v. Okay, now we have this command right here. We want to see what this command does, so I'm just going to run section. So v, and then in brackets we have 1. So what this does is extracts the first element of v. So this extracts the first element of v. Now this one, as you may have guessed, this will extract the third element of v. So let's just run a section and check. So this is the third element of v. So extracts the third element of v. Okay, now what do we have here? So we have v, and then in brackets we have 4 colon end. So let's check what this does. So if we run section, okay, it's given a 3 by 1. So it's given the last 3 values in the vector v. So it extracts the fourth, so the fourth element, which is 8.99, all the way to 1. So let me just run this again. It should be displayed as a column, as a row, not a column. So if we run section and then we run this one again, it should give a row. So if you run it again, we get a row, because it gave it as a column because it was previously saved as a column vector. So what this does is extracts the fourth till last element in v. Okay, and we used a keyword called end here. So notice how end can be used as an index. End corresponds to the last element in V. So you can use this end element to as an index. So if you typed in V in brackets end, it would give you the last element of end. So you can use end as an index. Now we have this another index here, but it has no pattern. So 1, 3, and 6 are inside the square brackets of the round brackets. So let's check what this does. So if you run section, we get the first element 2.59, then the third element minus 3.5, and then the last element, which is 1.000, or just 1. So using square brackets inside of the round brackets, we can extract elements which have like an irregular pattern. So 1, 3, and 6, they're not like there's no pattern with those. So we could do extracts. I'm just gonna write a little comment. Extracts the first, third, and sixth element in V. Notice how we used a vector, right? Because 1, 3, 6 in itself is a vector. Notice how we used a vector to extract from a vector. Okay. We could also like have like if I did 1, 2, and then 5. Let's see if this works. So if we run section, this is going to give me the first element, and then it's going to extract the third element, and then it's going to give me the fifth element. So the 2 in between is the gap, is the increment between each at each point. So the first, and then skip 2 to the third, and then fifth as the last. So if you go down, and so now we have a few more commands. So these are a few more commands. So we have max V, and we have minimum V, and we have sum V. So if we run section, we should be able to see what this does. So for the first one, I think, alright, so the first one is extracting the biggest value in V. So the biggest value in V is 8.99. So this extracts the largest value from V. And then similarly for min V, it extracts the smallest value. Extracts the smallest value from V. And finally for the last one, it is summing every value in V. And just to check that, let me quickly type in the command window. 2.59 plus 4 plus minus 3.5 plus 8.99 plus 2 plus minus 2 plus 1, and we get 11.08. So sum of V is summing every value in V. So finds the sum of all the elements in V. Okay, so now we have some new syntax. So it says V of 6 equal to 3. So if we run this, actually before running this, I'll actually try and explain what it does. So what this is actually doing is this equal sign is the assignment operator. So it's going to assign the sixth element of V the value of 3. Okay, so this will, and we're going to run it so in a second. So the sixth element of V is assigned the value of 3. Okay, so that's what happens when you type in this code. And then for the last line in this box, V of 4 is equal to these square brackets. All this does is these square brackets can be seen as like an empty vector or an empty value. So what this will do is the fourth element will be erased. So it will erase the fourth element. So if we run section, so notice how before the final value of V was 1 and now it's 3. And then once we apply this syntax or this code to it, it's deleted the fourth element, which was 8.99, and now we just remain with a one row, 5 column vector. So now finally for line number 22, we're going to type in some code here, and you might have already guessed it if you're familiar with vector and matrix syntax, is that this should, let's just run it, if we run section 1.5. So now v is currently a one row, 5 column vector. So all this will do is find out the dimensions of the vector. So it's m is the number of rows and n is the number of columns. So yeah, that's pretty much it for today. So we've just looked at how to index and how to apply a few commands to vectors. These are some basic commands but very powerful when doing some coding. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. That's it for today.